All right, so today we're going to begin on page 504, and then what you see behind me will make sense of that here in just a few moments. So when you look at page 590, even if all you saw or had observed was the thyroid gland, there should be only one hormone that should come to your mind, and it is probably one of the most important hormones, and it's thyroxine, okay? So once you state what it is, okay, why is it so important on what it does then? It has something to do with metabolism. You could say metabolisms because it has multiple functions. Probably the most important is carbohydrate metabolism, but that's not the only one. And lipids and protein. So there's three main functions for that hormone. Okay, and then once you get to smaller structures on the thyroid gland, what might we be referring to? Say that again. Okay, and okay, the TSH is further up back in the pituitary gland. But okay, so when you say PTH, that's one. Okay, and oh, I'm sorry. Yep, yes, but PTH, yes, that would come from the parathyroid gland. I was thinking calcitonin came from the parathyroids as well. No, that's not the case. That comes from that of the thyroid gland as well. So there's two main hormones, we could say. Okay. So on page 504, okay, we're just going to read there through 505. Then we're going to make sense of this, and then we're going to go through some of your special topics on what diabetes is on page 516, I think is what it was. Yes, diabetes mellitus. Okay, 504. Thyroid gland, as you can see above in the figure, is a vascular structure that consists of two large lateral lobes connected by a broad isthmus. The thyroid lies just below the larynx in either side of the anterior trachea. The gland is specialized to remove iodine from the blood, because if it does not remove iodine from the blood, it will swell in your neck, and it's a harmless disorder, but it doesn't look like it's harmless, but it essentially is. Yeah, you develop what's called a goiter. Okay. So we're not too concerned about the structure of the gland. We're more so concerned about the thyroid hormones on the bottom. Okay? Thyroid gland produces three important hormones. If I just would have read that, probably would have been able to avoid that with knowing that calcitonin comes from there. Okay? Because one of them is a little lesser known than the others. That's your T3 and T4, but we'll read about that here shortly. Okay? The follicular cells synthesize two of these, which have marked effects on metabolic rates of body cells. The extrafollicular cells produce the third type of hormone, which influences blood concentrations of calcium and phosphate ions. So if the parathyroid hormone will pull calcium ions out of the blood, then that third hormone we're talking about, calcitonin, of course, is an opposite effect, pushes the calcium back in. Okay. The two important hormones that affect cellular metabolic rates are thyroxine, okay, or tetrathyroidine, also called T4, because it includes 4 atoms of iodine, okay, which would make sense when you see that on the alternating page where you see the 4 iodine atoms written in red, okay, and triiodothyronine. Okay, also called T3, because it includes 3 atoms. These hormones also help regulate the metabolism of carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. So again, your basal metabolic rate is not going to be very good or very high if you have a dysfunctional thyroid gland. And a lot of that can be treated, okay? just like for someone, if they can't digest dairy products, probably just have to take a simple pill that would help them produce the enzymes to break down milk products. In this case, you just take a pill that helps synthesize or help in types of enzymes you need for breakdown of these materials. All right. Specifically, thyroxine and triiodothyronine increase the rate at which cells release energy from carbohydrates, enhance the rate of protein synthesis, and stimulate breakdown of metabolization of lipids, or mobilization. These hormones are the major factors determining how many calories the body must consume at rest to maintain life. Measured as the basal metabolic rate, they're essential for normal growth and development of maturation of the nervous system. Thyroid-stimulating hormone from the anterior pituitary gland controls the levels of thyroid hormones. Okay. Yeah, we'll read this too. Follicular cells require iodine salts to produce thyroxine and triiodothyronine. Such salts are normally obtained from foods and after they may have absorbed from the intestine. The blood carries some of them in the form of iodine to the thyroid gland. The efficient active transport protein called the iodide pump moves the iodides into the follicular cells where they're converted to iodine in concentrated. Okay? The iodine with the amino acid tyrosine is used to synthesize these thyroid hormones. Follicular cells synthesize the thyroglobulin, whose protein portion includes molecules of tyrosine. Many of them have already had iodine attached by an enzymatic reaction. As the thyroglobulin protein twists and coils into its tertiary structure, bonds form between these of the tyrosine molecules, creating potential thyroid hormones waiting to be released. The follicular cells make up molecules of thyroglobulin by endocytosis, break down the protein and release the individual thyroid hormones into the bloodstream. When the thyroid hormone levels in the bloodstream drop below a certain level, this process accelerates, returning thyroid hormone levels back to normal. Okay? So there again, that's another example of what we would say you got your float in the cattle tank, the float drops below a certain level, water comes shooting into the tank, and then the float goes back up to normal or up to the top, then the process halts. Very similar to what we're talking about here. Okay. Thyroxine T4 accumulates for at least 95% of circulating thyroid hormones, but once in the blood, most of the T3 and T4 combine with blood proteins, alpha globulins. It is the small fraction of hormone molecules that are not protein bound, okay, called free hormone, that act on target cells. Thus, T3, which has a 50-fold higher free concentration in the plasma, is physically more important. Additionally, T3 is nearly 5 times more potent than T4, and about a third of T4 is converted to T3 in peripheral tissues. So on your paper, okay, we have under TSH, okay, or thyroid stimulating hormone, okay, it has controls the release of thyroid hormones. T4 or thyroxine is higher in concentration, okay, because it counts for about 95%, okay. And then as we see, why is it important that T3 is not running at a high level inside of our body? What does it say about T3 as opposed to T4? We just read it once. What does it say? Okay. Thus, T3, which is 50-fold higher concentration in plasma, is physically more important. Additionally, T3 is nearly 5 times more potent than T4. Okay. So T4 is your thyroxine, but you don't want to have a lot of that T3. So it says it's important. Yes, I understand that. But it is such a potent hormone that you don't want to have a lot of that circulating through your blood, okay? Because it's about 5 times more potent than T4, okay? and about a third of T4 is converted to T3 in peripheral nerves. So it's easily converted, okay? So should you need some more of that potency, thyroxine can be converted really easily to that T3. Major thing we want you to know is thyroxine is T4, not T3. Make sense? Okay. Then we will just get to the bottom where it says praxis because it's talking about the third hormone. Okay? The thyroid gland produces calcitonin, which is usually referred to as a thyroid hormone, or excuse me, not referred to as a thyroid hormone, because it is synthesized by the C cells, a distinct form of glands follicles. Calcitonin plays a role in the control of blood calcium and phosphate ion concentration. It helps lower concentrations of calcium and phosphate ions by decreasing the rate at which they leave the bones and enter extracellular fluids by inhibiting the bone-destroying activity of osteoclast. At the same time, calcitonin increases the rate at which calcium and phosphate ions are deposited in bone matrix by stimulating the activity of osteoblasts. That will become more important when we get to next semester. Okay? It's one of the things that we say that why are bones shaped the way that they are? Okay, so one of the things that happens with an osteocyte is just a regular run-of-the-mill bone cell, because that's what osteo means, which is bone. And it's class and blast is going to be your different types of functions. It's actually the osteoclast, okay, which destroys bone tissue, okay. It's got a high concentration of hydrochloric acid in there, which dissolves bone tissue. Now you might think, do you really want a lot of that circulating through your bone tissues? Well, you really have to, okay? Because what happens is as we age, you're constantly going to be reshaping your bones. And in order to do that, you have to be able to dissolve minerals where it can afford to be dissolved and then build it with your osteoblasts, okay? So those osteoblasts would be associated with calcitonin. Because what is one of the functions of calcitonin? It lowers blood calcium ions, like we know, because what does it do to those calcium ions? Pushes them into the bone tissue, like this osteoblast does. And when it does that, it helps build your bone tissues. Health class, is that anybody in here? Have you done that yet, or you're in it now? Are you doing skeletal tissue or anything, or is that?
We're doing the cardiovascular.
Okay. Have you done the skeletal system yet? Okay. Well, even if you could possibly remember why bones look the way they do from last spring, when we're supposed to identify some of those bones, that's the reason, again, they get their shape. When you have, for instance, different types of structures like tubercles, condyles, epicondyles, when we name bones, it's more than just knowing the bone as a humerus, okay? It's got a head, it's got a tubercle, two of them, it's got a tuberosity on it, and it's got fossas on it. So even though in separate classes you might just identify it as one, as a humerus, there's probably about maybe close to 10 other identifications that are associated with that, okay? And some of the reasons is because that's why, again, bones are shaped the way they are, because tendons have to be able to attach to them. Is it ligaments or is it tendons that would move your muscles and bones? Yeah, because ligaments are bone to bone and tendons are muscles to bone, okay? What's the easiest way to keep that separate? Two ways. Your tendon of Achilles, or Achilles tendon, is where? Yeah, it's in your foot. It attaches your gastrocnemius to your heel bone, or calcaneus, okay? Then, for athletes, in the knee, it's your anterior cruciate ligament, or people just say ACL, that attaches two of your bones together. That's how you easy way to tell the difference between a ligament and a tendon. Okay. Destroying activity of osteoclasts, because osteoblasts actually build tissue. Okay. At the same time, calcitonin increases, we read that already. A high blood calcium concentration stimulates calcitonin secretion. This may occur following absorption of calcium ions in a recent meal. Certain hormones also promote calcitonin secretion, such as gastin. Okay. What does gastin do? It was a long time ago, if you want to say probably late September. It is something in your stomach. It has something to do with parietal cells. Yeah, it controls the acid function, okay? Certain hormones also promote calcitonin secretion, such as gastin, released from the active digestive organs. Calcitonin helps prevent prolonged elevated of blood calcium ion concentration after eating. Okay, so I think that's good enough for there. I just wanted to make sure, if we say T4, that is thyroxine, okay? Because you're saying T3 is triiodothyronine. Thyronine, is that thyronine. Okay, so what is more potent? Okay, so is that higher or lower in concentration than T4?
Lower.
It's lower. It's easily converted to a more usable form like thyroxine. But it's not that it's a problem with T3, it's just that it's way more potent than T4. So that's how the body, you could say, kind of keeps that in check. Okay, so this might look a little overwhelming, but like we said on your vocabulary page, if you didn't know what pheromones were, you could eliminate what you know of pheromones aren't to figure out what it is. So why don't you tell everyone in here, what do pheromones do?
They help ants communicate.
Right. It's a type of chemical signal that ants would tell one another, and it's basically how they maybe move from point A to point B, because the pheromones they leave behind is a type of scent trail, because that's what pheromones are. So the point is, you can eliminate, okay, what you know something isn't to figure out what it is. Now the orange numbers are telling you how many should be under each one. So with that, what would possibly be the easiest, let's say, classification? Okay, so then if there's 4 steroids, which there are, now if you write this down, fine. If not, it's all on here. It's just a way that we want to help you navigate your way through this process. So what are some steroids? Aldosterone. Okay, cortisol. Okay, and then you said estrogen, and then testosterone. Now, there's no rhyme or reason why these are separate colors. It's just that when they're written next to one another, you know that it doesn't belong together. So we could do a process of elimination and say, okay, so we've taken care of that one. We've taken care of, I don't want to put a line through there. And then, there we go. There's 4. Okay? So, these do have something in common. What are they categorized as? You're starting it. Gonadotropins. Okay? So once we see that, this must have an effect on male and female gonads, whether it's the testes or testicles in men and the ovaries in women. okay? So then, what about aldosterone? It's a mineral corticoid, which is right. I'm just going to put CC for corticoid, or else we're going to run out of room. Okay, so it's a mineral corticoid, which is true, which has an effect on which mineral? Sodium. Why is that so important? Because if your kidneys are grabbing all of these sodium ions, water is going to follow that sodium. So it's a way to, per se, hold on to water. Because if you have more water in your blood, okay, could that, so it's going to, it's not that it thins out the blood, but it would keep it more thin than thick. Because if blood gets too thick, what happens to the blood pressure? It would go up. So then this is a way, we could say, to keep your blood pressure, I wouldn't say down, but more so of a normal rate, because it helps you conserve that water by conserving sodium ions. Okay, so cortisol then. It's a glucocorticoid. I'm just going to put CC again for a glucocorticoid. So then it must have something to do with what type of metabolism? Glucose. Carbohydrates, but mainly just say glucose. That would be fine. Okay. So these might be the easiest. Then I would say that this would perhaps be the easiest because there's only two of them. Epinephrine and norepinephrine, okay? So this is what so when someone says, go grab the EpiPen, that's, I understand this is a pencil. This is what they're referring to. It's just, no one's going to say, go grab the epinephrine pen. They're going to say, go grab the EpiPen, okay? Then you stick that in someone's thigh, push the button, and it'll put that hormone into their system. Because what does, okay, let me put the other one down too. So I'm just going to put norepinephrine, okay? One of them is increasing the size of blood vessels. The other one is decreasing the size. So when we say goes up, we're talking about the circumference. That increases it. Then this is a constrictor, so it decreases the diameter of blood vessels. Okay, that's probably the most important aspect that we want you to know between those hormones. Okay. So if that's their difference, there is something that they do have in common. It increases something. Okay? So this will increase heart rate. Okay? So does this one. Okay? Now, you might say if this is getting bigger, okay, what's happening is the heart rate is going up because it's a tricky aspect when you're talking about cardiac output, which just means you're taking the stroke volume times the heart rate, okay? So in other case, what we're getting at is the epinephrine just makes it pump faster. Now, you might say, well, this does too, but this is perhaps more associated with stroke volume, and we'll talk about that when we get to the circulatory system. And the best way to describe that, okay, when your atria and ventricles, especially your ventricles, would that be more efficient if the chamber was half full of blood or full of blood? It's way more efficient when it fills up. Okay, you might say, well, yeah, you're pumping more blood. Well, yes, that's true, but when that heart fires, when it's essentially full of blood, it is way more efficient. Okay, so that would also increase the stroke volume, but they do it for various reasons. Okay. All right, so that takes care of those two, so we can do that and just put a line through that one. Now might be the tricky part, okay? But I believe if we can just give you a clue here, okay? So then glucagon. Okay, so only in name it has something in common with that because it's a glucocorticoid. Okay, it's just this is a steroid hormone, and of course these are non-steroid hormones. So blood sugar levels, one's up, one's down. Okay? And I think that's probably about all that that's about all we said about that. Then we can give you a little bit of a clue. Okay? And ADH. Now, the reason I wanted to put them next is, if you still have your books, look at page 502, figure 13.17. Okay? Now, the reason that we call these polypeptides is you're looking at figure 13.17 and saying, wait a minute, those all are individual what that make up these hormones? The cysteine, the threonine, the isoleucine. That might sound familiar. Isoleucine, what is it? It's an amino acid. These are both composed of amino acids, but those sulfur atoms in between there, okay, that's what we refer to as peptide bonds. So yes, I understand it's composed of amino acids, but it's not nearly as long as that one, PTH, which would belong under here. But one of the things is, when you look at that, those two hormones are very, very similar in function, okay? So when we look at this, I'm just reading the amino acids along the fish hook, if you want to call it that. So at the very top, they both have cysteine, they both have threonine, then oxytocin has isoleucine, where ADH has phenylalanine. Then you have glutamine, aspartic acid, cysteine to cysteine, proline to proline, then leucine to arginine, and then glycine to glycine. So not that we told you to keep track. How many? Is there 1, 2, 3, or 4 different amino acids? Or say that again? There's only 2. They differ by 2 amino acids. But when you think of that, just 2 different amino acids in structure, do they have the same function? Not by a long shot. Okay? So what would be the best way to illustrate what oxytocin does? Okay? We'd like to say this: positive feedback. So remember, that's amplifying something that's occurring in specifically who? Women. See, that's where we said, guys, we lucked out on this one. Okay? So it's amplifying something in women. What is it? Uterine contraction. So that means that childbirth is about to take place. So positive feedback mechanism on uterine contractions. Okay? So this works hand in hand with what hormone that we see up here? It works with this guy right here, or gal, or whatever. Okay? Because this is what causes so then this is a very good example of, okay, I know these are all hormones, but one of your vocabulary terms where you have one hormone that's looking for very specific receptor sites. In this case, it is the kidneys. It is a tropic hormone, okay? This is probably one of the best examples that you could give as a tropic hormone because it's out looking for a specific target. In this case, it's the kidneys. Okay, so we've done that one and this one. So then 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're done with that. So that must mean there should only be 4 left. Did I miscount one?
TSH. You have that down.
Huh, I miscounted then. Okay, so TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, okay? So then it's already in the name on what it does, okay? Which would be stimulates the thyroid gland. Okay, we're running short on time, and I think that's probably enough for today. We didn't quite get to our special topics, but I only have just a small amount. I'm going to hit pause here for just a moment. So on that page 516, I've got about a page typed. Okay, so when you handwrite that, I just remember when I first started, if I wrote a page and a half of writing is about a page typed. Okay, I don't know if that helps you out in the future. If you're writing something out and saying, I wonder how many pages this is. Okay, well, to me, if you write out physically 3 pages, that's probably about 2 pages typed. Okay, all right, so we'll go over that tomorrow. Then we'll wrap up the rest that we see here, which means we got to go through this one. And we just did TSH, so that's done. So then, well, glucagon we did already, didn't? Yep. And then this one, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. There we go. All right, so we'll catch up to you next time.